Sure, Spider-Man's the hero, and most of the time, Venom is the villain.
I have a parasite. Yeah.
That means that because of the way these stories have to go, Spider-Man usually wins.
Thanks to our very own Spider-Man!
But that doesn't mean Venom isn't powerful. He is, maybe even more powerful than Spider-Man. In fact, he has a ton of powers that pathetic little human Peter Parker could only dream of. Powers that today on The Binger, we will be breaking in full.
You ready?
Yeah?
You're gonna love this.
Okay, not all superpowers age well. When the internet was still a novelty, before it became the all-encompassing fact of life that it is today, Venom had the ability to enter the internet? In Venom vs. Carnage number 4 from 2004, Venom was battling Carnage and had to pull out all the stops. For some reason, this meant entering the internet on a molecular level, traveling from computer to computer via Ethernet cable, a process which has now been dubbed digital immersion. Eat that, Spider-Man! But now, 16 years later, there's a new Venom movie coming out, and our relationship with the internet has changed a lot.
But internet, so helpful.
It's become an essential part of human life, of how we socialize, relate to each other, and even think. So how will Venom interact with the World Wide Web in the year 2020? How will he do this whole digital immersion thing when we're all already so digitally immersed? Our money is on this. There are two types of people in this world: pocket people and bag people. Some people bring a bag with them wherever they go and store everything in that one bag. This has its drawbacks, like the fact that every time you go pay for a coffee, you have to rummage around in the depths of your bag to find change. Or when you take public transit, you have to pause at the turnstile and dig out your subway pass, holding up everyone behind you. Or, of course, there are those keys which are never where you want them to be. All of these pitfalls are why pockets exist. Everything you need is on your person, easy to find, tucked away in its own pocket. But pocket people also take it too far, getting cargo pants and even vests covered in pockets that look even less convenient than a bag. Venom is the ultimate pocket person. But instead of having his change jangling around in crude pouches, Venom stores everything inside his own body. The symbiote is obviously very dynamic and can change shape to accommodate all sorts of different situations, but it also has built-in biological pockets. When Peter Parker is the symbiote's host, he stores his camera in it. When Flash Thompson is the host, he stores guns in it. Convenient.
And the pockets are big enough for an umbrella.
So the term offspring detection sounds a lot more scientific than his ability actually is. So what actually is it? Well, first of all, I know what you're thinking, and no, it has nothing to do with detecting the band that made Pretty Fly for a White Guy. This is a psychic ability through which Venom's symbiote can detect all of the symbiotes that have been birthed from it. Now, this is no normal mammal birth, it's more like cell division or something scientific. But regardless of how the actual birth happens, almost all the symbiotes that exist on Earth originated with the Venom symbiote because it was the first one to land on our planet. Kind of like Eve being created out of Adam's rib, most of the symbiotes on Earth came from a little piece of Venom. Because they're all at their base a little part of him, Venom has the ability to psychically detect where his progeny are. It's kind of like all those horrifying apps that helicopter parents get to track their kids, but biologically built in. So maybe Carnage fighting against Venom is just a rebellion against a smothering parent? There is one catch though. If any symbiote offspring gets powerful enough, they can actually resist this locating power. Which brings us to our next ability. In a Marvel world where lots of people have superpowers, some of which can break down barriers between minds, having telepathy resistance in your arsenal is very useful. For all those pesky mind readers out there, I'm looking at you, Professor X, the mind of the Venom symbiote and its host are much harder to breach than your average person, or even the above average super person. If it feels like someone is prying into the mind of its host, the symbiote can actively fight back, although it doesn't always win. Nobody's perfect.
Touch me, and the only thing you're gonna feel is a broken jaw.
Camouflage might just be the most useful ability on this list. Although it's great to have abilities that help you fight people, it's better if you don't even have to fight in the first place. That is why camouflage is such a useful ability. If you're outgunned, outmanned, or maybe just not in the mood to throw down, you can just disappear like Milhouse did in The Simpsons.
Where'd he go?
Over here, my friends.
Or is it over here?
Or if you do want to fight, but you just want to get the jump on your opponent by sneaking up completely unnoticed, you can use camo like they do in the military. You can even use it if you're trying to hide something that you don't want anyone to see, like the plane from I Spy.
What you know about the leafy bug, sissy?
The thing with all these forms of camo is that they all have their drawbacks. The military version and the Millhouse versions are just clothing. The leaf bug from I Spy can only go invisible, but the Venom symbiote? It's definitely not just clothing, and it can go invisible or change color to blend in with its surroundings. But it can also actively morph into new shapes. The symbiote takes camo to a whole other level, and unless you have a very strong sixth sense, even stronger than a spidey sense perhaps, it's pretty much impossible to detect. This is another one that sounds a lot fancier than it is. Constituent matter generation.
What did you say?
In plain English, this just means that the symbiote can create shapes out of itself. The first image that will probably pop up in your head is Venom sprouting all those tendrils out of his back, or turning his hands into spikes that he can impale villains with, or turning them into hammers, which he can then use to turn his enemies into pancakes. This is pretty much the power from which all of Venom's other powers sprout. The world is his oyster. The only thing limiting what the symbiote can do is its host's creativity. Venom and Spider-Man both swing from webs. That's obvious enough, but Spider-Man has to make a web formula, put it into cartridges that he loads into devices strapped to his wrists, which shoot webs out. Venom doesn't do that at all, so how does he shoot webs? Easy! He just uses his power of constituent matter generation. This web-generating power is simply a subset of that other power, but the fact that he generates his webbing out of himself comes with its pros and cons. The webbing is very strong and doesn't require any of the scientific preparation that Spider-Man's gizmos do. On the other hand, because he's generating webs out of the symbiote, they deplete his reserve of strength and energy. As Spider-Man himself put it while fighting Venom for the first time, if I keep forcing Venom to use that webbing to keep from falling, his reserves could get depleted. He'll be like a human being with a bad wound, losing lots of blood. He'll get weaker and weaker until finally he runs out. So Venom uses webs just like Spider-Man, but why? If you've got any type of head on your shoulders, you may have wondered why this blob of alien goo, once it gloms onto a host's body, is not only able to, but actively gravitates towards Spider-Man-style powers. Well, that's because of one of the symbiote's other abilities. When it attaches to a host, the symbiote gains a physical memory of what that host does. The first host of the symbiote was Spider-Man, so when Eddie Brock attaches to the goo, he immediately has the muscle memory, or maybe the symbiote memory, to shoot and swing webs like a seasoned pro. This causes lots of problems for Spidey because Venom knows all his fighting moves already, and maybe, just maybe, he knows some of his other moves too. But the symbiote's memory doesn't stop there. Not only can it remember the powers, abilities, and physical moves of its past hosts, it can also remember what goes on inside their minds. The relationship between host and symbiotes is a complicated one. If the symbiote were simply an alien goo that augmented its host's physical abilities, then everyone would want a piece. Spider-Man would still be attached to it, but the symbiote doesn't just meld with the host's body. It's not like Spider-Man's costume, which can be taken on and off. It actually combines with the host's mind, which is why Peter Parker is so conflicted when he's hosting it. It's the same thing with Eddie Brock. He's in a constant battle for control with the symbiote. Eddie, who's just a bit of a mess but good at heart, doesn't want to run around causing chaos and becoming more powerful. The symbiote feels a little differently.
Let's eat his brains. No, you do not touch him, he is my friend.
But this mind meld has some benefits too. When the symbiote binds with someone's mind, it retains a genetic memory of that mind even after it moves on to a new host. That's why Eddie Brock, being a symbiote host after Spider-Man, knows exactly who is under the Spider-Man mask.
Hey, Parker.
Plus, after sharpening his abilities a little bit, he can take this power to the next level. By just touching someone for a second, the symbiote can get inside their head and, in a way, read their mind. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately depending on your perspective, if the symbiote undergoes too much trauma or strain, it can actually lose this physical memory. But if we had to distill this down to one power, one ability that encompasses all the other ones, it would have to be the symbiote's biology. It's easy to forget, but the symbiote is a living thing. It's alien goop, yes, but it's a living thing with its own hungers and desires. Even if those hungers and desires seem foreign to us humans. The symbiote is a parasite, and its goal as a parasite is to find a host and get as much as possible out of that host. And its impressive but also mysterious extraterrestrial biology adapts in whatever way it has to in order to recreate itself among hosts. So those are 10 of Venom's best powers. But the symbiote, in all of its forms, has many, many more. What are some of your favorite examples? Which ones do you think will appear in the upcoming movie? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to The Binger for your symbiotic fix.